still that uncertainty in so many different ways. Let me show you the practice facilities that still are unopened. We could start there. The Sixers, they're off this list. The training complex in Camden, New Jersey begins a phased reopening for voluntary individual workouts, players, essential staff, adhering, of course, to the strict safeguards in accordance with the guidelines from the association. So you still are down to kind of this Elite Eight, if you will, that's left. We're going to get into all the different reports and things, but as somebody who yourself, obviously, you think about the WNBA side, and we'll get into that later, there's so many questions. How is it dealing as an athlete watching all of this news play out without really a full level of control? Because certainly the players as a whole, but individually, you're sitting there as a family right now more than an athlete, right, Candace?
No, you're definitely sitting there, and a lot of the news reports that are coming out right now are just speculation, and a lot of it is being treated as fact. And so I think you're just kind of a little confused as to what's going on. Initially, the NBA does an amazing job usually of handling everything, just handling competitive advantage and things like that. But it was interesting to me early on. The NFL said if one facility isn't open, then the other 30 teams, they're not going to be able to go back to practice. And to me, it is a huge competitive advantage to have a practice facility open when you have some guys that don't have access to courts and are struggling to figure out how they're going to work out.
Yeah, we've talked about that, especially the younger players, right? I mean, we had Matisse Thybulle, who was talking to his robot vacuum because he didn't have much. I mean, a lot of the younger guys, they don't have those facilities like Paul Millsap, who was on with us a week or two ago, has a home gym to work out in. Let's look at the latest news as it continues, obviously, to develop. And Woj coming out with kind of where we sit now. The NBA Board of Governors meet with Adam Silver on Friday. No current expectation for a decision on a finalized return to play plan to emerge from the session, which is what we saw in the NHL just this week. Sources telling ESPN talks on incorporating the three most serious plans remain ongoing with the Players Association and with teams. And this is certainly, Candace, a different conversation than we've ever seen when it comes to, in any of the sports, the bartering or the agreements eventually of the union, right, and the owners, because the health factor that's involved. And do you think it's fair that every player in all these sports, like the NBA here, are saying, hey, look, the risk for me is different when you're saying that there's a health issue for me and my family, and I expect that financially you're going to pay attention to that?
Well, these are all things that I'm sure have to be taken into account when you decide what's the best course of action going forward. I do believe that, although we are more optimistic this week than we have been in weeks to come or weeks in past, I do think that there's a long way to go before this gets figured out. And along with figuring out the health, how to keep everybody safe, testing, competitive advantage, you also have to add to it that you have some teams that have not yet started playing at all. So adding into like a health concern of getting COVID, you're also adding to a point where you haven't been working out and you're going to be thrown onto a court and your practice facility isn't even opened when everybody else is. So I think that there's a number of things that the NBA has to look into, and they're far from it because the NBPA has to agree to a lot of the things that they're putting in place.
Yeah, the other thing I would throw in is in talking to athletes in both these sports now on the baseball side and here, we could say timetable of training camp, right? But we don't know what this routine is. Guys are coming in all different shape, and are they going to have something to play for? Like Dame is certainly questioning. And look, you and I both love him and the candor, and also he really is a grounded dude in terms of the way he looks at a lot of different things way beyond basketball, but very honestly says to Yahoo Sports, we come back and they're like, hey, we're going to add a few games, finish the regular season, throw us out there for meaningless games, no chance to make the playoffs. I'm going to be with my team, part of the team, but I'm not going to play. And there's an expletive in there as well, but I don't do those anymore. When you look at where they are 3.5 games out, you look at the NHL and what they did, Candace. They allowed the teams on the outside looking in to get in through a tournament style of, I guess, really it's more like tournament play than it is necessarily because there's round robins and all of that. But we've got Zion behind in the 10th spot, Dame. For me, this looks like a no-brainer, something the NBA should do. Now, I know I'm saying that as a fan. Where are you on this?
I'm with you, Casey. I don't think it's fair to end the season as it was. You have a Trailblazers team that was getting their pieces back, that were getting healthy. You have a Pelicans team in the same place, getting healthy. They had strung together a few wins, and you have a Grizzlies team that their strength of schedule was one of the toughest in the NBA. They had a lot of games on the road. They were playing teams that had a winning record. Same thing with the Mavs. I mean, they obviously have a little bit more cushion, but they're fighting for position with the Rockets. So you can't just not allow those teams that are in the 9th and 10th place and even 11th place to battle for a spot to play for a championship.
There are people who look at, and I go back to the Last Dance, which we just had, right? This is not getting on the New York-Chicago thing, but because I'm well aware that the year that the Knicks were able to at least move past, no Jordan, but also no Scotty on that last play. And people talk about all those moments in our lifetime as fans, right, Candace, of guys who don't want to play. How different is this? Because I think Dame is just being vulnerable and honest and willing to put himself out there. But do you expect there are a lot of players who, because of the health issues, might be saying, hey, look, I'm not going to play even if my team does if you don't do X, Y, and Z?
I probably will double down on the fact that Steph Curry will not play for the rest of the season. And depending on the way that they bring teams back, with the Pelicans, are they going to play and risk Zion? So what Dame is saying, and the critics that are yelling at him for, okay, well, in the real world, if you decide you don't want to do your job, you take a paid sick leave, you don't get paid, or you get fired. And with that being said, I think it has to be handled by a case-by-case, franchise-by-franchise place. Because if the NBA steps in and tries to handle this, then franchises, what separates that? If a franchise decides that it's best for Zion to sit, or it's best for Steph Curry to sit, then you're going to penalize Dame Lillard. It just, I don't know. It's a tough situation because you're battling something nobody has seen. I mean, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and so there's other things and other factors that are involved.